And here we are again with another tutorial. This one will be on the subtract tool and the basic features associated with the subtract tool. Now, basically, subtracting is the opposite of adding. I mean, it's pretty simple to think of it that way. When you add blocks, now you're going to subtract them by taking away from them, which is quite simple. By activating hotkey number 2 or clicking on the icon, and then you get a little blue square, and you can then subtract whatever you want. Now, the thing that makes subtract tool a little peculiar is how it interacts with things around it. When you're subtracting just a cube, it's going to warp the edges of the voxel next to it to match that shape you've just subtracted. So you're not going to get a clean cut every single time the way you want to do it. So you may have to do some particular work to get the end result you want, depending on how you've put that particular voxel shape together. If you're just doing basics, like I'm showing right here, I can scroll up and change the size just like the add tool and then delete out whatever I want based on a size. Now I can also switch my primitive shape. Hotkey C will change it to the sphere automatically, and likewise C will go back to a cube right after that. So I can just switch there. And then I can cut things, using the subtract tool, nice and simple like that. You get some pretty solid cuts. As you can see there, it's nice and clean. I get a really interesting curved edge. And then in the future, I can use that shape to create something if I so choose. Naturally manipulate a block in a way that is not a standard cube, which is really where the engine that Landmark is built on really comes from. So you get a lot of the really cool building features out of actually subtracting from what you're building when you add. Now, another part about the subtract tool is once you switch to a different primitive as well, you can switch to different modes. I'm not going to rotate these just like you can with the add tool. You don't have to do it always in tweak mode, so you can literally look at the hotkeys in the lower right hand corner, and if you want rotation, it's E by default, and if you want to go the other direction with scaling, you can press R again and go back to scaling. And once you've picked something that you actually want to do, you then click and it's going to do what it needs to do. Now, because I'm using a silly shape here, it's going to make a really interesting cut. Now, the part I was talking about earlier where it doesn't always do exactly what you want it to do, it depends on what blocks are where. And I can see here I had a really sharp cut, but then there's a slight weirdness on this one here that is not perfectly edged. And that's just because the way the blocks that were cut above it now warp to match the one below it, and the rendering engine decides to choose what would be the best way to represent that. So keep that in mind when you're subtracting things from one build to another, is that there may not be a dead set way or a very straightforward way to get to what you want. So pay attention to that, create some steps, try some stuff, delete things from different shapes, get what you want, and then you can end up creating other things. As a quick example, this is just copying this thing here, pasting it. Now I've got a shape here, which is rather basic, but now I've got a sharp little angle. I could use that on the edge, kind of like a buttress for some sort of building just by doing that, and I have a pretty solid curve there, nice and clean. And that all just came from deleting out of a square using the subtract tool. Now default subtract tool is hotkey 2. Keep that in mind. You'll be using that a lot. All right, keep building. Stay tuned. We'll have another tutorial coming up soon about the selection tool.